Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. We're going to get started in just a few more moments. All right, let's get started. My name is Allison, a Customer Success Associate here at YCharts, and hosting our webinar today is Nate Chatney, a manager also on our Customer Success team, and Brian Adams, an account executive on our sales team. Today, we're proud to introduce the new tool Quickflows that's going to save you time and ease your use of switching back and forth between different sections on our site. Please keep in mind that the content of this webinar is meant for educational purposes only and is not intended to be used as investment advice, nor is YCharts acting as an advising party regarding client funds in any way. Finally, as always, a recording of the webinar will be made available on YCharts and sent to all attendees. Now I'm going to pass it over to Brian to get us started.
Thanks, Allison. And as Allison mentioned, I'm a member of the sales team here at YCharts. I am thrilled to be a part of this release because I spend a great part of my day running my mouth about how advisors can save time, how I can help make your process faster, and the complex simple. Quickflows is absolutely a way to do that. The idea of Quickflows is that you can analyze a bucket of securities, whether it's stocks, funds, portfolios, and jump from tool to tool with those securities for further analysis. I've got Nate Chatney to my right. Nate, you want to give us a heads up on what we're looking at today?
Absolutely, Brian. As mentioned, I'm Nate Chatney. Some of you might recognize me as an account manager here at YCharts. And like Brian said, I'm going to give us a little bit of detail on what we're covering. So, what are we covering? Today's agenda, we're going to talk about the new Quickflows menu and all of its glory. Then we're going to go into how to use Quickflows for portfolio analysis and also for individual security analysis, and then find a really nice way to tie all that together. Generally speaking, we find the best way to communicate this is through sort of a story. So the way we're going to do that today is by introducing a character, Jane. Jane is your prospect. She just walked into your office and brought you a portfolio. So I'm going to jump into YCharts, and we're going to go take a look at Jane's portfolio now. We're going to go ahead and click on Model Portfolios. All right, and from here, we'll go ahead and jump into Jane's portfolio, which she brought to us. All right, Brian, why don't you tell us what we're looking at here?
All right, thanks, Nate. I've seen a lot of great applications of this model portfolio tool. For this example specifically, I think one of the most popular applications of model portfolios is the example of Jane Smith, your prospect, walking in your door of your office with a stack of statements, looking for some ideas, and we're going to give her a recommendation, or you're going to give her a recommendation. So starting that process by building her portfolio into the model tool, as you can see, the first thing that catches my eye is the chart. I see against the benchmark some pretty significant underperformance here. And so that's triggering me to look for a potential replacement for her portfolio. Just some of the underlying analytics in the models, as I scroll down, you see the allocations. We're about an 80-20 here. We've got good risk information on the right-hand side. But if you blinked, what you may have missed is this new Quickflows menu. So on the right-hand side of your page, you've got a new tab. That's our Quickflows menu. I'm going to click into this, and then you'll see that it expands. And so some of the things that opens up with, you'll see the ticker for my portfolio comes right into the menu. And then I have options to look at calendar year returns, performance and drawdowns, return against the market. And then where I'm going to look, which is within the holdings analysis. So returns for the underlying holdings. Also, some of the big fundamental metrics, geography exposures, risk, sector, styles. And we never forget about our econ majors. You can pull a chart against treasury rates. At the top, what you're going to see, we also have a comparison tab. If I click into that, it's going to pull my model over. You see that menu does not populate. I need to add something in there for comparison. I'm going to let Nate get to that in just a second, but let's go back and dive in. I'm going to jump because we just noticed that returns against that benchmark weren't looking so great into the quarterly returns. And what you're going to see here is that quick flow takes me right into the time series analysis tool where my model is already here and the metric for 3-month total returns is already built out for you. So looking at this table, a couple things that jump out to me as I look at the underlying holdings for my portfolio. The first column, most recent quarterly returns, I see a -10 against a bunch of positive numbers. So that certainly stands out. As I go left to right across this page, December of 18, if you recall, we saw that drawdown coming into 2019. This value fund also stands out with the biggest drawdown during that period. So I'm starting to get the red lights for this ETF. And again, thinking about what I might do to find a replacement. I'm going to take that just one step further back into Quickflows. If you remember that chart at the top called drawdowns versus the benchmark, this is a really cool illustration of basically what we were just looking at. And here you go. Again, it's already built out. So I'm looking now again at the portfolio level against the benchmark. But on the right-hand side, you see my format is % off of high. And we've annotated this chart to show you those drawdown, the max drawdowns with those dotted lines. So you see my purple line is my portfolio, orange line is the benchmark. Again, this is indicating to me that I'm not performing against the benchmark, and now I can easily see that in periods of drawdown, I'm actually doing worse. So I definitely want to dig into this. I'm going to let Nate do some of that legwork.
All right, good handoff, Brian. And one thing to point out before we move forward here, you'll notice that Brian hasn't had to go back to the model portfolio quote page once to reference that portfolio again. That's because our Quickflows menu has the ability to store the security that you came from and take that from tool to tool. This is expanded on by that comparison menu that we talked about a little while ago. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that, we're going to take Jane's portfolio here, and we're going to compare it against a couple other portfolios. Easy to do using the search function. I'll just go ahead and type in a couple of names. You'll notice as I type in the names, it's very similar to the regular YCharts search. And as I type in these few portfolios, let's add in a allocation fund just for fun. There we go. So we've got 3 portfolios and an allocation fund here. You'll notice as I type in those securities, the list of options below will change. Now these are all the ways we can use Quickflows to compare this group. I'd like you to think of this as your basket that you can use to carry these securities between the different tools on YCharts. Similarly to how you'd use a basket to carry items through the aisles of a grocery store. So now to start off, we're going to go ahead and jump into a risk comparison because performance isn't the whole story, which in a lot of the conversation I hear from my advisors these days talks about, what assets in a portfolio are inherently risky. And this is going to take us into a tool called Comp Tables, which is sort of the sister tool to Time Series. And we have these risk metrics here on these portfolios in this allocation fund. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this so we can see the results. And you can see of this group, a couple things that jump out to me. This beta column, Jane's portfolio easily has the highest beta in this group, as well as the highest standard deviation. So now we've established that not only is Jane's portfolio underperforming the benchmark, but she's also carrying more risk than she needs to be. And now one more comparison quick flow just for good measure. I'm going to go jump back over here to the menu. Click on that comparison tab. You'll note the securities are still there. And I'm more of a visual guy. I think most of my clients are as well. So we're going to go ahead and click on this performance chart. Okay, now here on the fundamental chart, if I go ahead and stretch our time frame out a little bit, and now we start to get a feel for things in terms of how Jane's portfolio compares to the group. Now, the risk would imply that she's probably not performing as well as she should, but in this case, she's actually doing fairly well against their competitors. So this may tell a little bit of a different story, that we can, we're starting with a pretty solid base here, perhaps for her goals, but we can move up even further from there using the things that Brian and I are going to show you in a little bit. One other thing to point out, we just went from model portfolios to time series to comp tables to fundamental charts in like 2 minutes. That would have taken about 5 to 6 times longer before, and having to know how to use each of these tools. Now, Quickflows takes care of all of that for you, so you can get back to doing what's important. So Brian, now that we know we have to improve, go ahead and take us away.
Yeah, this is a conversation that I really love, because I imagine you, the advisor, sitting in your office with Jane, and you've done this great analysis. You're using the modeling tool, using Quickflows, and Jane says, "Hey, by the way, my friend had this great stock." And so how do you react to that? So I'm going to go down the path of an individual stock. In this case, Jane thinking, this specific friend has been getting income off of this stock. So we're looking at something that pays some dividends. I'm going to use the top search bar to go into one of our favorite dividend payers, Home Depot. And as that quote page comes up, if you missed it the first time, you're certainly going to miss it again. That Quickflows menu is here, but it's right at the top in a hyperlink. And so I want to talk you through this. You'll note that it looks a little bit different. We've got some pages being redesigned. So this is what it looks like on those that have not yet been redesigned. But as you click into that menu, very similar functionality. You've got a lot of options. So on the individual stock, first thing that comes up, I can go straight into a dividend health chart. I can look at those dividends on a table. And as we come down, you see some of the other things that we can jump into. Fundamentals on a cash flow basis, earnings, performance charts, finding similar securities, which we'll come back to, valuation metrics, and all the way at the bottom, don't forget about those econ majors. All right, let's jump into dividend health chart and see what all the fuss is about here. All right, so again, you see what that Quickflow link is doing. We're taking you into another area of the tool, in this case, the fundamental chart, and it's pre-built out with some good information for you. So here you can see Home Depot is on the chart with the earnings per share and payout ratio, and the dividends are labeled so that as you scroll over, you can actually see that amount that's been paid and the date. Now, we can't just leave it at that. We want to dive in further to identify if this dividend payer is the best out of its group. So I'm going to take you back to the quote page, just clicking the back button. And we're going to jump back into the Quickflows menu, scroll down a bit, and use that valuation to market table. And so you'll see that this is pulling us back into a comp table. And there's a lot of my relative fundamental metrics built out for me. Now, Nate was telling me that a lot of his clients really love this information. So I want to kick it over to him real quick to talk us through this.
Absolutely. One of the questions I get all the time are, how do I interpret these relative metrics? It's a very good question, and it's an important one to have the answer to. So, real briefly, if we see, in this case, Home Depot's relative PE ratio to market is 1.142. What that means is Home Depot's PE ratio is 1.142 times that of the overall market. And just so we're clear, the market, as YCharts interprets it, is all 18,000 stocks in our universe. And we also notice that its relative PE ratio to the industry is 0.93, which would mean it's 0.93 times that of its industry. So while it may be a little above the market average, it's actually a little bit below the industry average, which might imply that it's slightly undervalued relative to some other stocks in its industry.
Awesome, thanks, Nate. So you got your client off of their tangent, and now we're gonna get back to business, which is finding that underperformer and doing something about it. So I'm just gonna use the Quickflows menu one more time to do that, and kind of go back to where I started, the quarterly returns for the underlying holdings. And what you'll notice if I just expand that menu one more time, I was able to get back here because that portfolio, the ticker, it stays within the Quickflows menu, making it really, really easy to navigate back to where I want to be. So I'm just going to click into our pure value ETF, take us into that quote page. And a couple of things I want to point out here. So we're looking for ways to replace this ETF. I love to start just on this performance tab within the quote. I'm going to click in there, and what we're going to see is a nice time series of returns, but also the chart showing that against a couple of system generated comparables. So very easily I can point out to the fact that our value ETF, that blue line at the bottom, is not only underperforming its benchmark, but also several peers. So again, Quickflows is my answer to solving this. I'm going back in, and you'll see the menu looks a little bit different than with the stock, but we still have the find similar ETF. I'm gonna jump in there. And you'll see that takes us into the ETF and fund screener with some pre-built metrics that Nate's going to talk us through.
Now, one of the things to point out, and I think it's very important at this point, is yes, we have all these wonderful qualitative filters up here that we took straight from the attributes of the referring ETF. But more importantly, I'll go ahead and minimize this. We now have 16 comparable securities that were spoon-fed. We didn't have to do anything. All we do is click one button and we have this list curated for us. That's pretty great. And now I can see where they rank in the category in terms of total returns. I can see the expense ratio, what they're benchmarking against. And let's just go ahead and sort by this 5-year total NAV returns rank and have a look at what we've got. And I'd also like to see at this point, what do these numbers actually mean? Because, ranked 9th in this case for SLYV is kind of meaningless without knowing what that translates into for returns. So let's go ahead and add a metric column to display that. So we're going to take a look at 5-year total returns to get a good idea of what those returns actually mean. And I can see that in the case of SLYV, we're looking at about 42.75% over 5 years. We're only paying 15 basis points. And now here's something interesting to point out. Have a look at this. RZV, this was our fencing fund right here. You're paying over twice as much for nothing. Okay, I think we've got our candidate for a replacement now. Let's go ahead and put a bow on this. So we're going to remember that SLYV is our replacement fund and head back onto model portfolios. All right, and now to illustrate the change, we're going to go ahead and duplicate this portfolio. We're just going to call this Jane Smith Revised. Now that that's done calculating, we can go and make our replacement. All right, now that we're in the editor, all I have to do is scroll down, click on Edit Items, and we can go say a tearful goodbye to RCV, and say hello to SLYV, which is going to be our replacement. I'll just click Update here. Nope, we're not going to invite a friend. And I'll click Save. And the portfolio will recalculate. All right, now that that's done calculating, let's go take a look at the portfolio. Okay, Brian, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and kind of wrap this up by taking a look at what we actually accomplished by making this change. So just like we had on the quote page, we have a performance tab here for the individual portfolio. If I click on that, and you may already see that on that chart alone, we're doing a little bit better against the benchmark just off that one change. And here, all I'm going to do is simply layer on, using the edit comparables at the top right, our initial portfolio. All right, so here you can see we've still got the benchmark there, and then the purple line now being our new portfolio or revised portfolio, that blue line just below it being the initial portfolio. We're on a 3-year look back here, and you can see we're 6+ percentage points better just by making that one change and replacing that one value fund. So you're not only making your client happy, you've also earned your fee, and everything looks pretty good. All right, Nate, I'm going to kick it back to you. Finish this up here.
Absolutely, Brian. So let's just take a quick second to recap. What did we talk about today? Well, Quickflows for one. We went over how to use the menu, and then we applied it to a real-life situation where Jane came into the office, she had her statements with her, we went through her portfolio, handled her tangents, and showed how we could add value as an advisor, which, at the end of the day, that's the name of the game, isn't it? So if you have any questions on Quickflows or any of the tools on YCharts, certainly welcome to reach out to Brian or myself, or really anyone here. Anyone on the team would be more than happy to help you. And now I'm going to hand it back to Allison.
Thanks, Nate, and thank you, Brian, for giving us an in-depth look at our new feature, Quickflows, and how we can leverage this tool for our YCharts experience. I do want to reiterate that a recording of this webinar will be made available in the support topics section of our site in case you need to review anything we went over or to share it with your colleagues. For any questions that you might have submitted during the presentation, your YCharts contact will be reaching out soon with the information you're looking for. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. We always appreciate any feedback that you might have. If you have any questions regarding anything we covered today, please feel free to reach out. Thanks.